If you're anything like me, you've been looking forward to Marvel Studios' WandaVision ever since Kevin Feige announced the show back during Disney Investor Day in 2019. Not only did the show look incredibly interesting from the start, but Marvel was also on the hottest streak possible off of the heels of Avengers Infinity War and mere weeks away from the release of their biggest project yet, Avengers Endgame. You may recall that at the time of its announcement, Wanda Maximoff had been a victim of the snapping, and Vision had, well, been deleted from existence, to put it lightly. I thought, wait, how is this show happening? I thought both of the main characters were not around anymore. At the time, it was relatively believable for me to assume Wanda would be able to come back somehow, since roughly half of all MCU characters were victims of the Thanos snap, and I knew there was no way that all of those characters would stay gone for long. But Vision, he was gone before the Thanos snap, making his return alive doubtful to say the least. So the circumstances surrounding the show obviously hinged entirely on the events of Avengers Endgame. And oh man, a bunch of things happened in that movie. Time travel, loss, grief, to name a few. But most importantly, the introduction of chubby Thor. No, of course I'm talking about the defeat of the big bad to end all big bads, Thanos. With all of that said, there's one event in Avengers Endgame that was more important than anything else to the premise of this video. The return of Wanda Maximoff. And oh boy, did she return in style, destroying Thanos' sword and almost defeating him all by her freaking self. What a badass. For some pre-WandaVision context, the last we see of her is at Tony Stark's funeral. Before we go any further, it is important that you understand me as an MCU fan. Unlike many fantastic people that make videos on the MCU, I would say my fandom for the MCU leans on the more casual side. I have seen every MCU film besides Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Honestly, I have no idea why those two are the ones that I have had no interest in seeing up to this point in my life, but those two just slipped through the cracks nevertheless. I was fully on the Infinity War Endgame hype train and really enjoyed those two entries greatly. I remember seeing Avengers Infinity War in a completely sold out movie theater on release day and being blown away at what Marvel had created. There were so many people like me who wanted to experience all of the emotions that come with the culmination of 10 years of shared universe experiences. With Infinity War, Marvel absolutely blew me away. Then came the year-long wait to witness the true ending to the Infinity Saga, the Endgame, if you will. The post-Infinity War pre-Endgame internet hype culture was one of the craziest times in recent memory. Theories ran absolutely wild on what would happen in Endgame, and I was here for it. Walking into that movie theater to see Avengers Endgame was surreal, to say the least. Everybody knew that not all of their favorite heroes would make it out alive, but wanted to have one last hurrah with the gang before the MCU would change forever. There was an ambiance to the movie theater that day that I'm confident will never be replicated. Endgame truly was a one-of-a-kind movie-going experience and something that I'm unlikely to ever experience again. However, with all of this said, I have to bring up that I have had a very hit-or-miss experience with the MCU as a whole throughout its decade-plus existence. I truly appreciate every film as part of a larger, greater-than-the-sum-of-its-parts universe, but I have come to grips with a controversial opinion that I have developed over time. The MCU has too many entries that are too similar. Too similar in tone, too similar in aesthetic, too similar in plot. It is important to note that this is my opinion, and my opinion is no better or worse than someone that thinks that every MCU entry is one of a kind. For me, this opinion that I have is the main reason why I was so excited for WandaVision. I wanted more than anything for the MCU to take a risk, swing for the fences, and either strike out or hit a home run. I was desperate for something new. After Marvel released the first trailer for WandaVision, one thing became abundantly clear. WandaVision was that swing for the fences. I didn't really have an opinion on Wanda Maximoff as a character at the time, but this trailer sparked a curiosity in me surrounding the character that never wavered going forward. WandaVision as a whole could end up going many different ways, ranging from the best MCU project of all time to downright horrible. But there was one thing I knew for sure after seeing this trailer. This project would be different, and that was what excited me more than anything. So here we are, perfectly set up for WandaVision. We are now living in a post-Endgame world where Wanda is back and everything is great. She is more powerful than ever and is even 5 years younger, relatively speaking, that is. Well, there is one tiny little problem. Where the heck is Vision? The show is called WandaVision, right? Am I missing something? Vision being noticeably absent from Endgame without even a semblance of hope that he may return was my first hint that WandaVision would be something truly unique. Immediately, my mind went wild, and my theory went in the direction of either Wanda manifesting some version of Vision in her head, or even maybe manifesting him in real life as well. However, I still had no answer for the main aesthetic of the show. In early promotional material, Marvel Studios decided to show almost exclusively Wanda and Vision living in a sitcom. Now this, I had absolutely no answer for. My only thought was, how in the world is this going to tie into the MCU? The MCU isn't a sitcom, not even close. This, in my opinion, is where WandaVision really started to stand out as the upcoming Marvel Studios project to look out for. Marvel had my full attention. Now here's where things get really interesting. Many of you may not remember this, but WandaVision was actually supposed to be the 5th Phase 4 MCU project released. For context, Marvel uses phases to split up the major bracketed timelines of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Phase 1 started with the original Iron Man in 2008 and ended with the Avengers in 2012. Phase 2 culminated with Avengers Age of Ultron, but Age of Ultron was not the end of the phase. The end of the phase would be Ant-Man, acting as an epilogue of sorts. Phase 3 was no different from Phase 2, culminating in Avengers Endgame, but ending with Spider-Man Far From Home. This also marked the end of the first saga in MCU history, the Infinity Saga. Phase 4 would not only mark the beginning of a new phase, but an entirely new saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This saga was supposed to begin with the standalone Black Widow film as a theatrical release and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier as the first MCU Disney Plus show. Then, 2020 happened and screwed up their entire release schedule. All scheduled theatrical releases like Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals were pushed back indefinitely, and all eyes turned to Marvel's Disney Plus offerings. Eventually, Kevin Feige announced that WandaVision would be the new start to Phase 4, and that it would be the beginning of an unofficial trilogy of sorts with the then untitled Spider-Man 3 and the recently announced Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Almost overnight, WandaVision transformed into a couple of things. The first MCU release in almost 18 months, and a project that would go on to garner more attention and viewership than I bet even the most optimistic analysts at Disney expected. People were starved for MCU content, and thus, on January 15th, 2021, WandaVision Mania began. After the first 2 episodes of WandaVision hit Disney Plus, there was a sense of mystery surrounding WandaVision that had never been seen before in the MCU. Marvel was intentionally vague on where WandaVision was headed, and the first 2 episodes gave little answers. I remember the initial internet consensus being that the first 2 episodes of WandaVision were slow and uneventful, but this was very much by design. Wanda clearly enjoyed living in this sitcom world, and Marvel wanted us to stop thinking about the grand scheme of things for a minute and live in this world with Wanda. Live in the alternate reality where Wanda and Vision could be together. Witness their love through the goofy lens of a 50s and 60s sitcom. There's plenty of time for all of the MCU goodness that was to come. As a result, this slow start enabled the internet to absolutely run wild with theories. Little was confirmed and much was left unanswered, left to the imagination of the keen viewer. After January 15th, everyone was a WandaVision theorist, and thus the most entertaining span of internet buzz surrounding any Marvel project began. I don't think in the entire existence of the MCU there has been a project that was so theorized. Wanda's living in a dream world. No, wait. Wanda is being manipulated by Mephisto. No, wait. Did you see how suspicious Agnes has been? Hold up. Agnes. As in Agatha Harkness? There's no way Marvel would be this obvious, would they? This must be a misdirection. Out of nowhere, WandaVision Mania became a masterclass in why weekly releases are still so important to the television medium. An episode is released and the internet is given the time needed to let the episode breathe and settle. And of course, the internet is given time to theorize. No questions can be answered by just skipping to the final episode, and no plot details can be spoiled by somebody who no-lifed the entire show in one sitting. Now we reach the present day, March 2021. As of recording, there is one episode of WandaVision left, and to say I'm hyped would be a massive understatement. I can honestly say that even having not seen the finale, WandaVision exceeded my expectations tenfold. Living these past couple of months of hype with the internet has been the most fun I have ever had with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's not even close. Going back to my baseball analogy, Marvel hit a grand slam with WandaVision. Satisfying answers were given almost every question I had going into the show, and the sitcom aesthetic was earned tremendously and put into a new context in episode 8. Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen absolutely owned their roles as the stars of their own show in both fiction and reality. With WandaVision, the internet was treated with what I believe to be top tier MCU. I hope Marvel and Disney learn from this massive success and continue to be wacky and creative in the best possible way. I want to wrap this up by saying thank you. Thank you to the internet for making this such an incredible experience. Keep doing what you do, spoiling all of my favorite TV shows before they air due to airtight theorization. And Marvel, thank you for saving my love for the MCU.